Fear Yahavah alone, testimonies of his power. Exodus 14, verse 13 to 14. But Moses told the people, "Don't be afraid, just stand still and watch Yahavah rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. Yahavah himself will fight for you. Just stay calm." Deuteronomy 6, verse 13. You must fear Yahavah your Elohim and serve him. When you take an oath, you must use only his name. Deuteronomy 28, verse 7. Yahavah will conquer your enemies when they attack you. They will attack you from one direction, but they will scatter from you in 7. Deuteronomy 31, verse 6. So be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, and do not panic before them. For Yahavah your Elohim will personally go ahead of you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. Joshua 1, verse 9. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged. For Yahavah your Elohim is with you wherever you go. Joshua 6, verse 1 to 5. Now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one was allowed to go out or in. But Yahavah said to Joshua, I have given you Jericho, its king, and all its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will walk ahead of the ark, each carrying a ram's horn. On the 7th day you are to march around the town 7 times, with the priests blowing the horns. When you hear the priests give one long blast on the ram's horns, have all the people shout as loud as they can. Then the walls of the town will collapse, and the people can charge straight into the town. Joshua 6, verse 15 to 21. On the 7th day the Israelites got up at dawn and marched around the town as they had done before. But this time they went around the town 7 times. The 7th time around, as the priests sounded the long blast on their horns, Joshua commanded the people, Shout, for Yahavah has given you the town. Jericho and everything in it must be completely destroyed as an offering to Yahavah. Only Rahab the prostitute and the others in her house will be spared, for she protected our spies. Do not take any of the things set apart for destruction, or you yourselves will be completely destroyed, and you will bring trouble on the camp of Israel. Everything made from silver, gold, bronze, or iron is sacred to Yahavah and must be brought into his treasury. When the people heard the sound of the ram's horns, they shouted as loud as they could. Suddenly, the walls of Jericho collapsed, and the Israelites charged straight into the town and captured it. They completely destroyed everything in it with their swords. Men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, goats, and donkeys. Judges 3, verse 9 to 11. But when the people of Israel cried out to Yahavah for help, Yahavah raised up a rescuer to save them. His name was Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother Kenaz. The spirit of Yahavah came upon him, and he became Israel's judge. He went to war against King Cushan-Rishathaim of Aram, and Yahavah gave Othniel victory over him. So there was peace in the land for 40 years. Then Othniel son of Kenaz died. 1 Samuel 14, verse 8 to 15. All right then, Jonathan told him. We will cross over and let them see us. If they say to us, Stay where you are or we'll kill you, then we will stop and not go up to them. But if they say, Come on up and fight, then we will go up. That will be Yahavah's sign that he will help us defeat them. When the Philistines saw them coming, they shouted, Look, the Hebrews are crawling out of their holes. Then the men from the outpost shouted to Jonathan, Come on up here, and we'll teach you a lesson. Come on, climb right behind me, Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, for Yahavah will help us defeat them. So they climbed up using both hands and feet, and the Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer killed those who came behind them. They killed some 20 men in all, and their bodies were scattered over about half an acre. Suddenly, panic broke out in the Philistine army, both in the camp and in the field, including even the outposts and raiding parties. And just then an earthquake struck, and everyone was terrified. 1 Samuel 17, verse 45 to 49. David replied to the Philistine, You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of Yahavah of heaven's armies, the Elohim of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today Yahavah will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is an Elohim in Israel. and everyone assembled here will know that Yahavah rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is Yahavah's battle, and he will give you to us." As Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. 1 Samuel 23. One day news came to David that the Philistines were at Keilah stealing grain from the threshing floors. David asked Yahavah, "Should I go and attack them?" "Yes, go and save Keilah," Yahavah told him. But David's men said, "We're afraid even here in Judah. We certainly don't want to go to Keilah to fight the whole Philistine army." So David asked Yahavah again, and again Yahavah replied, "Go down to Keilah, for I will help you conquer the Philistines." So David and his men went to Keilah. They slaughtered the Philistines and took all their livestock and rescued the people of Keilah. Now when Abiathar son of Ahimelech fled to David at Keilah, he brought the ephod with him. Saul soon learned that David was at Keilah. "Good," he exclaimed. "We've got him now. Elohim has handed him over to me, for he has trapped himself in a walled town." So Saul mobilized his entire army to march to Keilah and besiege David and his men. But David learned of Saul's plan and told Abiathar the priest to bring the ephod and ask Yahavah what he should do. Then David prayed, "O Yahavah, Elohim of Israel, I have heard that Saul is planning to come and destroy Keilah because I am here. Will the leaders of Keilah betray me to him? And will Saul actually come as I have heard? O Yahavah, Elohim of Israel, please tell me." And Yahavah said, "He will come." Again David asked, "Will the leaders of Keilah betray me and my men to Saul?" And Yahavah replied, "Yes, they will betray you." So David and his men, about 600 of them now, left Keilah and began roaming the countryside. Word soon reached Saul that David had escaped, so he didn't go to Keilah after all. David now stayed in the strongholds of the wilderness and in the hill country of Ziph. Saul hunted him day after day, but Elohim didn't let Saul find him. One day near Horish, David received the news that Saul was on the way to Ziph to search for him and kill him. Jonathan went to find David and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in Elohim. "Don't be afraid," Jonathan reassured him. "My father will never find you. You're going to be the king of Israel, and I will be next to you, as my father Saul is well aware." So the two of them renewed their solemn pact before Yahavah. Then Jonathan returned home, while David stayed at Horish. But now the men of Ziph went to Saul in Gibeah and betrayed David to him. "We know where David is hiding," they said. "He is in the strongholds of Horish on the hill of Hakilah, which is in the southern part of Jeshimon. Come down whenever you're ready, O king, and we will catch him and hand him over to you." "Yahavah bless you," Saul said. "At last someone is concerned about me. Go and check again to be sure of where he is staying and who has seen him there, for I know that he is very crafty. Discover his hiding places and come back when you are sure. Then I'll go with you. And if he is in the area at all, I'll track him down, even if I have to search every hiding place in Judah." So the men of Ziph returned home ahead of Saul. Meanwhile, David and his men had moved into the wilderness of Maon in the Arabah valley south of Jeshimon. When David heard that Saul and his men were searching for him, he went even farther into the wilderness to the great rock, and he remained there in the wilderness of Maon. But Saul kept after him in the wilderness. Saul and David were now on opposite sides of a mountain. Just as Saul and his men began to close in on David and his men, an urgent message reached Saul that the Philistines were raiding Israel again. So Saul quit chasing David and returned to fight the Philistines. Ever since that time, the place where David was camped has been called the Rock of Escape. David then went to live in the strongholds of En-Gedi. 2 Samuel 5 verse 17 to 25. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king of Israel, they mobilized all their forces to capture him. But David was told they were coming, so he went into the stronghold. The Philistines arrived and spread out across the valley of Rephaim. So David asked Yahavah, "Should I go out to fight the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?" Yahavah replied to David, "Yes, go ahead. I will certainly hand them over to you." So David went to Baal-perazim and defeated the Philistines there. Yahavah did it. David exclaimed, He burst through my enemies like a raging flood. So he named that place Baal-perazim, which means Yahavah who bursts through. The Philistines had abandoned their idols there, so David and his men confiscated them. But after a while the Philistines returned and again spread out across the valley of Rephaim. And again David asked Yahavah what to do. "Do not attack them straight on," Yahavah replied. "Instead, circle around behind and attack them near the poplar trees. When you hear a sound like marching feet in the tops of the poplar trees, be on the alert. That will be the signal that Yahavah is moving ahead of you to strike down the Philistine army." So David did what Yahavah commanded, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. Judges 7 verse 7 to 9. Yahavah told Gideon, "With these 300 men I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon collected the provisions and ram's horns of the other warriors and sent them home. But he kept the 300 men with him. The Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon. That night Yahavah said, "Get up, go down into the Midianite camp, for I have given you victory over them." Judges 7 verse 19 to 22. It was just after midnight, after the changing of the guard, when Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew the ram's horns and broke their clay jars. Then all three groups blew their horns and broke their jars. They held the blazing torches in their left hands and the horns in their right hands, and they all shouted, "A sword for Yahavah and for Gideon." Each man stood at his position around the camp and watched as all the Midianites rushed around in a panic, shouting as they ran to escape. When the 300 Israelites blew their ram's horns, Yahavah caused the warriors in the camp to fight against each other with their swords. Those who were not killed fled to places as far away as Beth Shittah near Zererah and to the border of Abel Maholah near Tabbath. 2 Kings 6 verse 15 to 18. When the servant of the man of Elohim got up early the next morning and went outside, there were troops, horses, and chariots everywhere. "Oh, sir, what will we do now?" the young man cried to Elisha. "Don't be afraid," Elisha told him, "for there are more on our side than on theirs." Then Elisha prayed, "O Yahavah, open his eyes and let him see." Yahavah opened the young man's eyes, and when he looked up, he saw that the hillside around Elisha was filled with horses and chariots of fire. As the Aramean army advanced toward him, Elisha prayed, "O Yahavah, please make them blind." So Yahavah struck them with blindness as Elisha had asked. 2 Kings 17 verse 39. You must worship only Yahavah your Elohim. He is the one who will rescue you from all your enemies. 2 Kings 19 verse 32 to 37. And this is what Yahavah says about the king of Assyria. His armies will not enter Jerusalem. They will not even shoot an arrow at it. They will not march outside its gates with their shields, nor build banks of earth against its walls. The king will return to his own country by the same road on which he came. He will not enter this city, says Yahavah. For my own honor and for the sake of my servant David, I will defend this city and protect it. That night the angel of Yahavah went out to the Assyrian camp and killed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. When the surviving Assyrians woke up the next morning, they found corpses everywhere. Then King Sennacherib of Assyria broke camp and returned to his own land. He went home to his capital of Nineveh and stayed there. One day while he was worshiping in the temple of his god Nisroch, his sons Adramelech and Sharezer killed him with their swords. They then escaped to the land of Ararat, and another son, Esarhaddon, became the next king of Assyria. 2 Chronicles 13, verse 14 to 18. When Judah realized that they were being attacked from the front and the rear, they cried out to Yahavah for help. Then the priests blew the trumpets, and the men of Judah began to shout. At the sound of their battle cry, Elohim defeated Jeroboam and all Israel and routed them before Abijah and the army of Judah. The Israelite army fled from Judah, and Elohim handed them over to Judah in defeat. Abijah and his army inflicted heavy losses on them. 500,000 of Israel's select troops were killed that day. So Judah defeated Israel on that occasion because they trusted in Yahavah, the Elohim of their ancestors. 2 Chronicles 14, verse 11 to 13. Then Asa cried out to Yahavah his Elohim, O Yahavah, no one but you can help the powerless against the mighty. Help us, O Yahavah our Elohim, for we trust in you alone. It is in your name that we have come against this vast horde. O Yahavah, you are our Elohim. Do not let mere men prevail against you. So Yahavah defeated the Ethiopians in the presence of Asa and the army of Judah, and the enemy fled. Asa and his army pursued them as far as Gerar, and so many Ethiopians fell that they were unable to rally. They were destroyed by Yahavah and his army, and the army of Judah carried off a vast amount of plunder. 2 Chronicles 32 verse 1 to 23. After Hezekiah had faithfully carried out this work, King Sennacherib of Assyria invaded Judah. He laid siege to the fortified towns, giving orders for his army to break through their walls. When Hezekiah realized that Sennacherib also intended to attack Jerusalem, he consulted with his officials and military advisors, and they decided to stop the flow of the springs outside the city. They organized a huge work crew to stop the flow of the springs, cutting off the brook that ran through the fields. For they said, "Why should the kings of Assyria come here and find plenty of water?" Then Hezekiah worked hard at repairing all the broken sections of the wall, erecting towers, and constructing a second wall outside the first. He also reinforced the supporting terraces in the city of David and manufactured large numbers of weapons and shields. He appointed military officers over the people and assembled them before him in the square at the city gate. Then Hezekiah encouraged them by saying, "Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Assyria or his mighty army, for there is a power far greater on our side. He may have a great army, but they are merely men. We have Yahavah our Elohim to help us and to fight our battles for us." Hezekiah's words greatly encouraged the people. While King Sennacherib of Assyria was still besieging the town of Lachish, he sent his officers to Jerusalem with this message for Hezekiah and all the people in the city. This is what King Sennacherib of Assyria says: "What are you trusting in that makes you think you can survive my siege of Jerusalem?" Hezekiah has said, "Yahavah our Elohim will rescue us from the king of Assyria." Surely Hezekiah is misleading you, sentencing you to death by famine and thirst. Don't you realize that Hezekiah is the very person who destroyed all Yahavah's shrines and altars? He commanded Judah and Jerusalem to worship only at the altar at the temple and to offer sacrifices on it alone. Surely you must realize what I and the other kings of Assyria before me have done to all the people of the earth. Were any of the gods of those nations able to rescue their people from my power? Which of their gods was able to rescue its people from the destructive power of my predecessors? What makes you think your Elohim can rescue you from me? Don't let Hezekiah deceive you. Don't let him fool you like this. I say it again, no god of any nation or kingdom has ever yet been able to rescue his people from me or my ancestors. How much less will your Elohim rescue you from my power? And Sennacherib's officers further mocked Yahavah Elohim and his servant Hezekiah, heaping insult upon insult. The king also sent letters scorning Yahavah, the Elohim of Israel. He wrote, "Just as the gods of all the other nations failed to rescue their people from my power, so the Elohim of Hezekiah will also fail." The Assyrian officials who brought the letters shouted this in Hebrew to the people gathered on the walls of the city, trying to terrify them so it would be easier to capture the city. These officers talked about the Elohim of Jerusalem as though he were one of the pagan gods, made by human hands. Then King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah son of Amoz cried out in prayer to Elohim in heaven. And Yahavah sent an angel who destroyed the Assyrian army with all its commanders and officers. So Sennacherib was forced to return home in disgrace to his own land. And when he entered the temple of his god, some of his own sons killed him there with a sword. That is how Yahavah rescued Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem from King Sennacherib of Assyria and from all the others who threatened them. So there was peace throughout the land. From then on, King Hezekiah became highly respected among all the surrounding nations, and many gifts for Yahavah arrived at Jerusalem, with valuable presents for King Hezekiah, too. Daniel 3 verse 7 to 30. So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. 8 But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed on the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Long live the king! You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments. That decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the Elohim whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king, in his anger, had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly, Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High Elohim, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own Elohim. Therefore I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the Elohim of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Daniel 6. Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded, "Our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion." So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his Elohim. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for Elohim's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about his law. "Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions?" "Yes," the king replied, "that decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked." Then they told the king, "That man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his Elohim 3 times a day." Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. In the evening the men went together to the king and said, "Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed." So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, "May your Elohim, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living Elohim, was your Elohim, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "Long live the king. My Elohim sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight. And I have not wronged you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his Elohim. Then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. The lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. "Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the Elohim of Daniel. For he is the living Elohim, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. 2 Chronicles 20 verse 1 to 29. After this, the armies of the Moabites, Ammonites, and some of the Meunites declared war on Jehoshaphat. Messengers came and told Jehoshaphat, "A vast army from Edom is marching against you from beyond the Dead Sea. They are already at Hazazon Tamar." This was another name for En-Gedi. Jehoshaphat was terrified by this news and begged Yahavah for guidance. He also ordered everyone in Judah to begin fasting. So people from all the towns of Judah came to Jerusalem to seek Yahavah's help. Jehoshaphat stood before the community of Judah and Jerusalem in front of the new courtyard at the temple of Yahavah. He prayed, "O Yahavah, Elohim of our ancestors, you alone are the Elohim who is in heaven. You are ruler of all the kingdoms of the earth. You are powerful and mighty. No one can stand against you. O our Elohim, did you not drive out those who lived in this land when your people Israel arrived? And did you not give this land forever to the descendants of your friend Abraham? Your people settled here and built this temple to honor your name. They said, 'Whenever we are faced with any calamity such as war, plague, or famine, we can come to stand in your presence before this temple where your name is honored. We can cry out to you to save us, and you will hear us and rescue us.' And now see what the armies of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir are doing. You would not let our ancestors invade those nations when Israel left Egypt, so they went around them and did not destroy them. Now see how they reward us. For they have come to throw us out of your land, which you gave us as an inheritance. O our Elohim, won't you stop them? We are powerless against this mighty army that is about to attack us. We do not know what to do, but we are looking to you for help." As all the men of Judah stood before Yahavah with their little ones, wives, and children, the spirit of Yahavah came upon one of the men standing there. His name was Jahaziel son of Zechariah, son of Benaiah, son of Jeiel, son of Mattaniah, a Levite who was a descendant of Asaph. He said, "Listen, all you people of Judah and Jerusalem. Listen, King Jehoshaphat. This is what Yahavah says. Do not be afraid. Don't be discouraged by this mighty army, for the battle is not yours, but Elohim's. Tomorrow, march out against them. You will find them coming up through the ascent of Ziz at the end of the valley that opens into the wilderness of Jeruel. But you will not even need to fight. Take your positions, then stand still and watch Yahavah's victory. He is with you, O people of Judah and Jerusalem. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Go out against them tomorrow, for Yahavah is with you." Then King Jehoshaphat bowed low with his face to the ground. And all the people of Judah and Jerusalem did the same, worshiping Yahavah. Then the Levites from the clans of Kohath and Korah stood to praise Yahavah, the Elohim of Israel, with a very loud shout. At the very moment they began to sing and give praise, Yahavah caused the armies of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir to start fighting among themselves. The armies of Moab and Ammon turned against their allies from Mount Seir and killed every one of them. After they had destroyed the army of Seir, they began attacking each other. So when the army of Judah arrived at the lookout point in the wilderness, all they saw were dead bodies lying on the ground as far as they could see. Not a single one of the enemy had escaped. King Jehoshaphat and his men went out to gather the plunder. They found vast amounts of equipment, clothing, and other valuables, more than they could carry. There was so much plunder that it took them 3 days just to collect it all. On the 4th day they gathered in the Valley of Blessing, which got its name that day because the people praised and thanked Yahavah there. It is still called the Valley of Blessing today. Then all the men returned to Jerusalem, with Jehoshaphat leading them, overjoyed that Yahavah had given them victory over their enemies. They marched into Jerusalem to the music of harps, lyres, and trumpets, and they proceeded to the temple of Yahavah. When all the surrounding kingdoms heard that Yahavah himself had fought against the enemies of Israel, the fear of Elohim came over them. So Jehoshaphat's kingdom was at peace, for his Elohim had given him rest on every side. Job 12 verse 16 to 25. Yes, strength and wisdom are his. Deceivers and deceived are both in his power. He leads counselors away, stripped of good judgment. Wise judges become fools. He removes the royal robe of kings. They are led away with ropes around their waist. He leads priests away, stripped of status. He overthrows those with long years in power. He silences the trusted advisor and removes the insight of the elders. He pours disgrace upon princes and disarms the strong. He uncovers mysteries hidden in darkness. He brings light to the deepest gloom. He builds up nations and he destroys them. He expands nations and he abandons them. He strips kings of understanding and leaves them wandering in a pathless wasteland. They grope in the darkness without a light. He makes them stagger like drunkards. Psalm 22 verse 27 to 28. The whole earth will acknowledge Yahavah and return to him. All the families of the nations will bow down before him. For royal power belongs to Yahavah. He rules all the nations. Psalm 27 verse 1 to 3. Yahavah is my light and my salvation. So why should I be afraid? Yahavah is my fortress, protecting me from danger. So why should I tremble? When evil people come to devour me, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident. Psalm 27 verse 5. For he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Psalm 33 verse 10. Yahavah frustrates the plans of the nations and thwarts all their schemes. Psalm 33 verse 18 to 22. But Yahavah watches over those who fear him, those who rely on his unfailing love. He rescues them from death and keeps them alive in times of famine. We put our hope in Yahavah. He is our help and our shield. In him our hearts rejoice, for we trust in his holy name. Let your unfailing love surround us, Yahavah, for our hope is in you alone. Psalm 34 verse 5. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. Psalm 34 verse 7 to 9. For the angel of Yahavah is a guard. He surrounds and defends all who fear him. Taste and see that Yahavah is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. Fear Yahavah, you his righteous people, for those who fear him will have all they need. Psalm 34 verse 17 to 22. Yahavah hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. Yahavah is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The righteous person faces many troubles, but Yahavah comes to the rescue each time. For Yahavah protects the bones of the righteous. Not one of them is broken. Calamity will surely destroy the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be punished. But Yahavah will redeem those who serve him. No one who takes refuge in him will be condemned. Psalm 37 verse 4. Take delight in Yahavah, and he will give you your heart's desires. Psalm 46 verse 1 to 2. Elohim is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. Psalm 46 verse 11. Yahavah of heaven's armies is here among us. The Elohim of Israel is our fortress. Interlude. Psalm 55 verse 22. Give your burdens to Yahavah, and he will take care of you. He will not permit the righteous to slip and fall. Psalm 56 verse 3. But when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. Psalm 56 verse 4. I praise Elohim for what he has promised. I trust in Elohim, so why should I be afraid? What can mere mortals do to me? Psalm 56 verse 10 to 11. I praise Elohim for what he has promised. Yes, I praise Yahavah for what he has promised. I trust in Elohim, so why should I be afraid? What can mere mortals do to me? Psalm 62 verse 9. Common people are as worthless as a puff of wind, and the powerful are not what they appear to be. If you weigh them on the scales, together they are lighter than a breath of air. Psalm 91 verse 1. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Psalm 91 verse 9 to 16. If you make Yahavah your refuge, if you make the Most High your shelter, no evil will conquer you, no plague will come near your home. For he will order his angels to protect you wherever you go. They will hold you up with their hands, so you won't even hurt your foot on a stone. You will trample upon lions and cobras. You will crush fierce lions and serpents under your feet. Yahavah says, I will rescue those who love me. I will protect those who trust in my name. When they call on me, I will answer. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue and honor them. I will reward them with a long life and give them my salvation. Psalm 108 verse 12 to 13. Oh, please help us against our enemies, for all human help is useless. With Elohim's help we will do mighty things, for he will trample down our foes. Psalm 112 verse 6 to 8. Such people will not be overcome by evil. Those who are righteous will be long remembered. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust Yahavah to care for them. They are confident and fearless, and can face their foes triumphantly. Psalm 118 verse 6. Yahavah is for me, so I will have no fear. What can mere people do to me? Psalm 125 verse 1. Those who trust in Yahavah are as secure as Mount Zion. They will not be defeated, but will endure forever. Proverbs 1 verse 7. Fear of Yahavah is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Proverbs 3 verse 7. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Instead, fear Yahavah and turn away from evil. Proverbs 3 verse 25 to 26. You need not be afraid of sudden disaster or the destruction that comes upon the wicked, for Yahavah is your security. He will keep your foot from being caught in a trap. Proverbs 9 verse 10. Fear of Yahavah is the foundation of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One results in good judgment. Proverbs 29 verse 25. Fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting Yahavah means safety. Isaiah 8 verse 11 to 13. Yahavah has given me a strong warning not to think like everyone else does. He said, don't call everything a conspiracy like they do, and don't live in dread of what frightens them. Make Yahavah of heaven's armies holy in your life. He is the one you should fear. He is the one who should make you tremble. Isaiah 35 verse 4. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong and do not fear, for your Elohim is coming to destroy your enemies. He is coming to save you. Isaiah 41 verse 10. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your Elohim. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. Isaiah 41 verse 13. For I hold you by your right hand. I, Yahavah your Elohim. And I say to you, don't be afraid. I am here to help you. Isaiah 43 verse 1 to 2. But now, O Jacob, listen to Yahavah who created you. O Israel, the one who formed you says, do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by name, you are mine. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up, the flames will not consume you. Isaiah 50 verse 10. Who among you fears Yahavah and obeys his servant? If you are walking in darkness without a ray of light, trust in Yahavah and rely on your Elohim. Isaiah 51 verse 12 to 13. I, yes I, am the one who comforts you. So why are you afraid of mere humans, who wither like the grass and disappear? Yet you have forgotten Yahavah, your Creator, the one who stretched out the sky like a canopy and laid the foundations of the earth. Will you remain in constant dread of human oppressors? Will you continue to fear the anger of your enemies? Where is their fury and anger now? It is gone. Isaiah 54 verse 14 to 15. You will be secure under a government that is just and fair. Your enemies will stay far away. You will live in peace, and terror will not come near. If any nation comes to fight you, it is not because I sent them. Whoever attacks you will go down in defeat. Isaiah 57 verse 13. Let's see if your idols can save you when you cry to them for help. Why, a puff of wind can knock them down. If you just breathe on them, they fall over. But whoever trusts in me will inherit the land and possess my holy mountain. Jeremiah 17 verse 7 to 8. But blessed are those who trust in Yahavah and have made Yahavah their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along a riverbank, with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green, and they never stop producing fruit. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, says Yahavah. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Zephaniah 3 verse 17. For Yahavah your Elohim is living among you. He is a mighty Savior. He will take delight in you with gladness. With his love, he will calm all your fears. He will rejoice over you with joyful songs. Malachi 3 verse 6. I am Yahavah, and I do not change. That is why you descendants of Jacob are not already destroyed. Matthew 6 verse 33 to 34. Seek the kingdom of Elohim above all else, and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. So don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Matthew 8 verse 23 to 27. Suddenly, a fierce storm struck the lake, with waves breaking into the boat. But Emmanuel was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him up, shouting, Master, save us! We're going to drown. Emmanuel responded, Why are you afraid? You have so little faith. Then he got up and rebuked the wind and waves, and suddenly there was a great calm. The disciples were amazed. Who is this man? They asked. Even the winds and waves obey him. Matthew 10 verse 19 to 20. When you are arrested, don't worry about how to respond or what to say. Elohim will give you the right words at the right time. For it is not you who will be speaking, it will be the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Matthew 10 verse 26. But don't be afraid of those who threaten you. For the time is coming when everything that is covered will be revealed, and all that is secret will be made known to all. Matthew 10 verse 28. Don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body. They cannot touch your soul. Fear only Elohim, who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Matthew 10 verse 31. So don't be afraid. You are more valuable to Elohim than a whole flock of sparrows. Matthew 14 verse 27. But Emmanuel spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I am here. Mark 4 verse 39 to 41. When Emmanuel woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, Silence, be still. Suddenly the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. Then he asked them, Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? The disciples were absolutely terrified. Who is this man? They asked each other. Even the wind and waves obey him. Luke 12 verse 4 to 5. Dear friends, don't be afraid of those who want to kill your body. They cannot do any more to you after that. But I'll tell you whom to fear. Fear Elohim, who has the power to kill you and then throw you into hell. Yes, he's the one to fear. John 14 verse 27. I am leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. John 16 verse 33, I have told you all this, so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows. But take heart, because I have overcome the world. Romans 8 verse 15, so you have not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves. Instead, you received Elohim's Spirit when he adopted you as his own children. Now we call him Abba, Father. Romans 8 verse 31, what shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If Elohim is for us, who can ever be against us? Romans 8 verse 35 to 39, can anything ever separate us from the Messiah's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted or hungry or destitute, or in danger, or threatened with death? As the scriptures say, for your sake we are killed every day, we are being slaughtered like sheep. No, despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through the Messiah, who loved us. And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from Elohim's love. Neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today, nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from Elohim's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of Elohim that is revealed in the Messiah, Emmanuel, our Master. Philippians 1 verse 28, don't be intimidated in any way by your enemies. This will be a sign to them that they are going to be destroyed, but that you are going to be saved, even by Elohim himself. Philippians 4 verse 6 to 7, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell Elohim what you need, and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience Elohim's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in the Messiah, Emmanuel. Colossians 2 verse 14 to 15, he canceled the record of the charges against us and took it away by nailing it to the cross. In this way, he disarmed the spiritual rulers and authorities. He shamed them publicly by his victory over them on the cross. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, for Elohim has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. Hebrews 13 verse 5 to 6, don't love money. Be satisfied with what you have. For Elohim has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. So we can say with confidence, Yahavah is my helper, so I will have no fear. What can mere people do to me? 1 Peter 3 verse 13 to 14, now, who will want to harm you if you are eager to do good? But even if you suffer for doing what is right, Elohim will reward you for it. So don't worry or be afraid of their threats. 1 Peter 5 verse 7 to 9, give all your worries and cares to Elohim, for he cares about you. Stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Remember that your family of believers all over the world is going through the same kind of suffering you are. 1 John 4 verse 4, but you belong to Elohim, my dear children. You have already won a victory over those people, because the Spirit who lives in you is greater than the spirit who lives in the world. 1 John 4 verse 16 to 18, we know how much Elohim loves us, and we have put our trust in his love. Elohim is love, and all who live in love live in Elohim, and Elohim lives in them. And as we live in Elohim, our love grows more perfect. So we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Emmanuel here in this world. Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. Revelations 19 verse 5 to 10, and from the throne came a voice that said, praise our Elohim, all his servants, all who fear him, from the least to the greatest. Then I heard again what sounded like the shout of a vast crowd, or the roar of mighty ocean waves, or the crash of loud thunder. Praise Yahavah, for Yahavah our Elohim, the Almighty reigns. Let us be glad and rejoice, and let us give honor to him. For the time has come for the wedding feast of the Lamb, and his bride has prepared herself. She has been given the finest of pure white linen to wear. For the fine linen represents the good deeds of Elohim's holy people. And the angel said to me, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. And he added, these are true words that come from Elohim. Then I fell down at his feet to worship him, but he said, "No, don't worship me. I am a servant of Elohim, just like you and your brothers and sisters who testify about their faith in Emmanuel. Worship only Elohim, for the essence of prophecy is to give a clear witness for Emmanuel." Then I saw heaven opened, and a white horse was standing there. Its rider was named Faithful and True, for he judges fairly and wages a righteous war. His eyes were like flames of fire, and on his head were many crowns. A name was written on him that no one understood except himself. He wore a robe dipped in blood, and his title was the Word of Elohim. The armies of heaven, dressed in the finest of pure white linen, followed him on white horses. From his mouth came a sharp sword to strike down the nations. He will rule them with an iron rod. He will release the fierce wrath of Elohim, the Almighty, like juice flowing from a winepress. Revelations 20 verse 11 to 15. And I saw a great white throne, and the one sitting on it. The earth and sky fled from his presence, but they found no place to hide. I saw the dead, both great and small, standing before Elohim's throne. And the books were opened, including the book of life. And the dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. The sea gave up its dead, and death and the grave gave up their dead, and all were judged according to their deeds. Then death and the grave were thrown into the lake of fire. This lake of fire is the second death, and anyone whose name was not found recorded in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. Revelations 21 verse 1 to 4. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from Elohim out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, Elohim's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. Elohim himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever." Ephesians 6 verse 10. A final word. Be strong in Yahavah and in his mighty power.